I never should have answered the phone. It was Christmas Eve, late at night, and I was driving through the back roads of Ohio with my girlfriend, Emily. This was our tradition. We'd spend Christmas Eve with my family, then drive through the night to hers. It was only a 2-hour drive, but most of it was through quiet, empty roads, just trees, fields, and the occasional farmhouse glowing with holiday lights. I loved those drives. Until this year. The snow had started falling lightly, dusting the roads in a soft white glow. It was peaceful, just the two of us, listening to music, laughing, wrapped up in the magic of Christmas. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I ignored it. Probably a scam call. A few minutes passed. Then it rang again. Same number. Emily shot me a look. Who keeps calling you this late? No clue, I muttered, turning the volume up on the music. Then it rang a third time. I sighed, grabbed my phone, and swiped to answer. Hello. Silence. At first, I thought the call had dropped. Then, beneath the static, I heard breathing. Slow. Deep. Who is this? I demanded. Then, a man's voice. Hello, Luke. I nearly swerved off the road. My grip tightened on the wheel. Who the hell is this? He ignored me. Instead, he started reciting my personal information. My full name. My address. Details about my life that no stranger should know. I felt my stomach drop. Who are you? Another pause. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I'm not here for you. I'm here for Emily. My head snapped toward her. She was staring at me, wide-eyed, her breath hitching in her throat. I gritted my teeth and lied. I don't know an Emily. The man chuckled. She's sitting right next to you. I pulled over. I didn't even think about it, I just had to stop the car. My hands were shaking, my breath coming fast. Emily reached over and, in one fluid motion, hung up the phone. I turned to her, furious. Why the hell did you do that? Her face was pale. I don't know. I just panicked. I immediately tried calling the number back. Nothing. Tried again. Disconnected. The music had stopped. The car was filled with heavy silence, the kind that settles in your chest and doesn't leave. I could hear Emily's breathing, shallow and quick. Emily, I said slowly, who the hell was that? She shook her head. I don't know. But something in her voice, she wasn't telling me everything. I put the car in drive and floored it. We didn't talk the rest of the way. Every time my phone lit up, I flinched, expecting it to be that number again. But it never was. When we finally pulled into her driveway, the house was dark. Her parents were asleep. But as I put the car in park, something strange happened. Emily reached over and locked the doors. I turned to her, confused. What are you doing? She wouldn't look at me. Her hands were trembling. Emily, I said again, softer this time. What is it? She swallowed hard. I think I know who it was. I felt my stomach twist. Tell me. She took a shaky breath. A few years ago, back when I lived in Cincinnati, I had a stalker. My blood ran cold. He never hurt me, she continued. But he'd send me messages, leave notes on my car. Sometimes, I'd see him standing outside my dorm. Just watching. I clenched my jaw. Did you ever tell the police? Yeah. They couldn't do anything. He never threatened me, never touched me. Then, one day, he just stopped. The air in the car felt wrong. I exhaled slowly. Emily, do you think that was him? Her hands tightened into fists. I don't know. But how else would he know where we were? The realization hit me like a truck. He had to be following us. I turned in my seat and scanned the street. The houses were quiet, dark. Snow fell in soft sheets, covering the road. There was no one there. At least, no one that I could see. I turned back to Emily. We should tell your parents. She shook her head. Not tonight. They won't believe me. They never did before. I swallowed down my frustration. Okay. But tomorrow, we go to the police. She nodded. We stepped out of the car and hurried inside. The house was warm, filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. It should have felt safe. It didn't. Emily went upstairs, but I lingered by the window, staring out into the snow-covered street. I don't know how long I stood there. But just as I turned to go upstairs, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I lifted the phone to my ear. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. Just breathing. Deep. Slow. Then. "I'll see you soon, Luke." The line went dead. I used to live in the city. It was all I ever wanted: bright lights, endless energy, the constant hum of life surrounding me. But after what happened, I knew I couldn't stay. Even the smallest noises sent me spiraling. Every slammed door, every honk of a horn felt like an electric shock straight to my nerves. My psychiatrist called it phonophobia, said it was a rare reaction to trauma. All I knew was that I had to get out. So, I moved. I found a cabin deep in the Pacific Northwest, buried in the woods. No traffic, no neighbors, barely any cell service. It was exactly what I needed: just me, the trees, and silence. At first, it was perfect. I'd wake up to the sound of birds instead of sirens, breathe in crisp morning air instead of city smog. The cabin was small but sturdy, built to last. Thick wooden beams, a stone fireplace, the scent of pine and old books lingering in the air. It felt safe. For the first time in months, I thought I could finally relax. Then, a week after I moved in, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The cabin had no doorbell, just a thick wooden door with an iron handle. I hesitated, my stomach twisting as I made my way toward it. Through the peephole, I saw an old woman standing on my porch, holding a basket. Her hair was long and silver, her blue eyes piercing, almost too sharp. She didn't smile, didn't greet me, just stood there, waiting. I opened the door. She introduced herself as Michelle, my nearest neighbor, said she lived about 10 minutes down the trail. Her voice was calm, her expression unreadable. She extended the basket toward me, jars of preserves, homemade, neatly wrapped. I took it, muttering a thank you. Then, she said something that made my skin crawl. "Always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe." Her voice was flat, almost rehearsed, like she was reciting a rule. I nodded, unsure of what to say. She watched me for a long moment, then turned and walked back down the path, disappearing into the woods. I stood in the doorway, gripping the basket, waiting to hear her footsteps fade. But she didn't leave right away. She stood there, just beyond my line of sight. Listening. I didn't sleep well that night. 3 nights later, a storm rolled in. The power flickered around 9 p.m., forcing me to light a few candles. The thunder rattled the walls, the wind howling through the trees. But despite the storm, I felt peaceful. For the first time since moving in, I wasn't afraid of the silence. Then, a knock. Loud. Urgent. It made me jump, my heart slamming against my ribs. I grabbed my flashlight and moved toward the door, every step slow, deliberate. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw Michelle. Her hair was soaked, her clothes clinging to her thin frame. She was breathing heavily, eyes darting toward the woods. I opened the door, the freezing air rushing in. "There's someone near your woodpile," she blurted out. I saw him. A chill ran through me. I stepped onto the porch, my flashlight cutting through the rain, scanning the trees. Nothing. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded, her gaze flickering between me and the darkness beyond my cabin. I didn't know what to say. The storm made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead, but the way she was acting, the way her shoulders were tense like she was ready to run, I believed her. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back into the storm. I stood there until her flashlight disappeared into the woods. And then I locked every door and window. I barely slept. Every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind, every shift of the trees outside sent a fresh wave of fear through me. By the time morning came, I had almost convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe Michelle had seen a shadow, maybe she was paranoid. Maybe I was. But then I remembered something. Her house was 10 minutes away. She would have had to be on my property to see anything near my woodpile. Why the hell was she watching my cabin in the first place? That night, I was more paranoid than ever. I kept all the lights on, checking the windows every few minutes, heart pounding with every shift of the wind. Around midnight, I finally started to relax, telling myself I was overreacting. Then I heard it. A branch snapping. Right outside my bedroom window. I went still. Not the wind. A footstep. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move toward the window. Slowly, carefully, I peered outside. And I saw her. Michelle. Standing at the edge of the woods, half hidden in the trees. She wasn't moving. Just standing there, staring toward my cabin. My stomach dropped. What the hell was she doing? I ducked down before she could see me, my breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. I counted to 10, then forced myself to look again. She was gone. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I decided to confront her. I was done with the cryptic warnings, the watching, the stalking. But when I got to her cabin, it was abandoned. Dust-covered windows. A door that hadn't been opened in years. Weeds growing through the cracks in the porch. I felt my stomach turn. The police didn't help. They barely listened, shrugging it off as me being paranoid, saying I was adjusting to the isolation. I almost convinced myself they were right. Until the last night. I woke up to banging. Not a knock. Something slamming against my front door, again and again. I bolted upright, grabbing the nearest weapon, a fire poker. My hands trembled as I crept toward the door. The banging stopped. Then, the door burst open. A man. Not Michelle. A tall, burly man, soaking wet, his face twisted in fury. I didn't think. I swung. The fire poker connected with his arm, making him stumble back. I ran for my room, slammed the door, locked it. My phone, where was my phone? I heard him ripping through my cabin. Smashing things. Looking for me. Then, sirens. The police arrived just in time. But by the time they got there, the man was gone. They searched the woods, but found nothing. No footprints. No signs of where he had gone. But they did check Michelle's cabin. They told me no one had lived there in decades. They said it was abandoned. I know what I saw. Michelle was real. And so was the man in my cabin. I don't know if she was trying to warn me or if she was involved. I don't think I'll ever know. But I do know one thing. I never went back to that cabin. I've been driving for rideshare services for a few years now, mostly sticking to late-night shifts. The roads are quieter, the tips are better, and I've always preferred the stillness of the night over the chaos of the daytime rush. But there's a trade-off. Every once in a while, you get a passenger who sticks with you, not in a good way. This happened a few months ago. I didn't have a dash cam back then, and this night was the reason I finally bought one. It started off like any other shift. Just me, my music, and the occasional creak of my old 2005 Volvo. The streets were empty, exactly how I liked them. Then, sometime after 2 a.m., I got a ride request. The pickup location was a convenience store about 10 minutes away. Nothing unusual about that, except for the second I accepted it, I felt something off. I can't explain it. It wasn't fear, exactly. More like my gut was telling me don't go there. I almost ignored it, but I didn't. Maybe it was greed. Maybe I just didn't want to waste time between fares. So I drove. As I pulled up, I immediately understood why my gut had warned me. The store was closed. All the lights were off, and the parking lot was empty, except for one person. He was pacing near the entrance, his movements jerky, like he couldn't stand still. His hoodie was ratty, full of holes, the sleeves frayed like they'd never seen a washing machine. He kept glancing over his shoulder, looking around like he expected someone, or something, to be following him. The second I saw him, I hovered my finger over the cancel ride button. But I didn't press it. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to be rude. Maybe I thought I was just being paranoid. So instead, I unlocked the doors. The second he slid into the back seat, I regretted it. Most passengers either scroll through their phones or look out the window, ignoring me completely. But not this guy. He just sat there, staring at me through the rearview mirror. Not blinking. Not looking away. Just staring. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the road, but every time I glanced up, his eyes were still locked on mine. His face was mostly shadowed under the hood, but I could see enough. He looked angry. Unsettled, I reached for the radio, clicking it on to break the silence. The second the music started, his body jerked forward. "Turn it off," he snapped. His voice was deep, rough, like someone who had been smoking for years. It wasn't just the words that scared me, it was the way he said them. Like a demand. I gripped the wheel a little tighter and did as he said. For a while, we drove in silence. I told myself he was just some guy having a rough night. Maybe high, maybe paranoid. Just another late-night passenger. If I kept quiet, drove fast, and dropped him off, I'd be fine. Then, finally, he spoke. "You ever pick up someone you shouldn't have?" I forced out an awkward laugh. "I hope not." He didn't laugh. He leaned back and muttered something under his breath, something I couldn't make out. Then, after a long pause, he said, "I used to drive for Uber. Quit after some punk stole stuff from my car." He was slurring his words now. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to pretend like I wasn't hanging on to every word he said. Then he smiled. A slow, creeping grin. "You ever think about how much trust you put in the guy sitting behind you?" I felt my stomach twist. I didn't respond. I just kept driving. He let out a small chuckle and leaned back again, muttering more to himself. At first, it was gibberish. Then, his voice grew shaky. "I didn't mean it," he mumbled. "Didn't mean it. I'm a bad person." The words sent a chill through me. I glanced at the GPS. 3 more minutes to his stop. That was when he snapped out of it. "Hey! You missed the turn." I hadn't. The GPS showed we were exactly where we needed to be. But I slammed the brakes anyway. Out of pure, knee-jerk fear. He stared at me, his breathing heavy, then jabbed a finger toward a dark, empty side road. "Pull over." My hands tightened on the wheel. "No, man, your stop is just ahead." I said pull over. Before I could say anything, headlights flooded my rearview mirror. A police car. It was moving slow, its spotlight briefly sweeping over my car. The guy in my back seat slouched down. Not casually, like he was hiding. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I could feel the air shift, feel the tension thickening between us. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he sat up again. And smiled. "You got lucky," he whispered. Then, just like that, he opened the door and disappeared into the night. I sat there, shaking, watching the empty street in my mirror. My heart was hammering, my breath coming in short gasps. I should have called the police right then and there, should have done something, anything. But I didn't. I just drove away. I ended my shift early that night. Went straight home, locked my doors, and sat in the dark, trying to shake off the feeling that I had just narrowly escaped something very, very bad. A few weeks later, I came across a news article. A convenience store had been robbed the same night I picked that guy up. 2 blocks from where I had picked him up. They never caught the guy. And I never told the police. Because deep down, I knew. It was him. And I had let him into my car. I don't drive nights anymore. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing.